Hey everybody. So with the season quickly approaching, we're gonna get into actual games and stuff going on pretty soon. So the list videos are probably gonna become less and less frequent as we get into having stuff each and every day to talk about. So before the season started, I wanted to talk a little bit about bold predictions. So these are things that probably aren't going to happen, but I think could, and are kind of way out there from what most people are saying heading into this season. So if any of these things did happen, it would certainly be a huge surprise. But it's the NHL, and we seem to get at least a couple big surprises every year. So you definitely can't rule all of these things out from happening, but they are certainly long shots to say the least. So I'm going to talk about five bold predictions I have for this year, and they're certainly not things that I would ever bet money on happening, but they are things that I think could potentially happen, and it would be pretty shocking to everyone involved if they did. So first up, Nashville Predators missing the playoffs. Again, Nashville is a team that a lot of people have right near the top of the league. They won the President's Trophy last year. They're thought of as one of the best teams in the league. But there are some issues there that I see, and while I certainly wouldn't expect them to miss the playoffs, and I would never pick them to miss the playoffs this year, I think if things go a certain way, it could happen. When I look at Nashville's lineup, they obviously have an extremely good defense, but where are the goals going to come from, especially outside of that first line? They're very, very reliant on that first line to score their goals. And Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson as the top line wingers are obviously going to score a lot of goals, assuming they stay healthy. But what if you lose one of them? Or what even if they stay healthy, you can't rely on one line to score all of your goals, especially in a division as tough as the Central Division, which has no real bad teams in it, and it's going to be a dogfight all year long in that division with teams like Winnipeg and St. Louis and Minnesota and Colorado and Dallas. Nothing is going to be handed to you in that division. So, there's a lot of pressure on Nashville's secondary scorers to produce. Guys like Craig Smith and Colton Sissons and Kevin Fiala. Those guys are going to have to score goals for this team to go anywhere. The second line is going to have to produce offensively. The third line is going to have to produce offensively. And if they don't, and if they're completely reliant on Forsberg and Arvidsson to score goals, I think this team could be in trouble. And it's not something that's likely to happen, but it's possible. And also, what if Pekka Rinne starts to look like a 35-year-old goaltender? I mean, he is up there in age. He has played a lot of games. He's played a lot of minutes in his career. He's been Nashville's goaltender for what feels like forever now. What if Father Time finally catches up with him and we see a significant decline in Pekka Rinne's play this year? If you combine that with a lack of goal scoring, and we could have a very surprisingly bad season for the Nashville Predators. So while that's not something I expect to happen, it is a bold prediction. It is definitely something that I could see that there's a formula there for it to happen. So while I expect Nashville to be a playoff team, I think that there's a chance out there that things go really, really bad this year for the Predators, and they are on the outside looking in come the end of the season. Next bold prediction, St. Louis isn't any better than they were last year. St. Louis made a ton of changes this offseason. They've made a ton of additions in free agency, big name additions. They've made trades, the biggest trade being the Ryan O'Reilly deal. this team, after missing the playoffs last year, was obviously upset with that and went out and made serious changes to their lineup. What if those changes don't work? Just look back to summer of 2017. Everyone crowned the Dallas Stars as the winners of the offseason, and the team that was made all these changes and got so much better in the offseason. Did they make the playoffs last year? Nope. They weren't really any better than they were the year before. So just because St. Louis made all these changes and everyone thinks they've gotten so much better, they've been crowned the winners of the offseason for this past summer. What if they're not any better? It's definitely a possibility because we just saw it with Dallas. If these new players don't have chemistry and don't mesh well together, they could end up right in the exact same spot that they were last year, just outside the playoff picture. So, everyone's picking St. Louis to be so much improved this year and definitely a playoff team, but it's definitely not a guarantee, and they're going to need to actually show up and play this year. It's not just going to be handed to them. Nothing in that Central Division is going to be handed to you, and it's no different for the Blues. And they also have the Jake Allen question. Can Jake Allen carry a team the way that a high-level starting goaltender should be able to? He's been extremely inconsistent in his career, and he has not shown that ability to carry a team like that for any long stretch of time. So there's a question there as well. So while things look good for St. Louis, nothing is guaranteed. Next, number 3, bold prediction: Calgary wins the Pacific Division. This is something that I haven't heard anybody say this. Everyone is picking San Jose for the most part to win that division, especially since they've added Erik Karlsson. But Calgary, I think, is a really interesting team to look at, and a real question mark, because I feel like Calgary could either be an absolute dumpster fire and finish down near the bottom of the division, or they could be a complete home run and possibly win it. They've made a lot, much like St. Louis, they've made a lot of changes this offseason in free agency and trades. They made the huge trade for Noah Hannafin and Elias Lindholm. They brought in Derek Ryan in free agency. They brought in James Neal. They've made a lot of changes in Calgary, and we have no idea how any of those are going to work out. They could end up, right back out of the playoffs where they were last year, and basically the Carolina Hurricanes 2.0, or I think they could finish as high as first in that division with, being led by stars like Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan. Now they have, Hannafin on the back end to go along with Giordano and Brody and Hamonic. And if they get good goaltending, if Mike Smith stays healthy and plays at the level that he can, Calgary could be a sleeper team to win the division and have a very, very good season. Bold prediction number 4, the Boston Bruins falter and end up missing the playoffs after what they did last season. And this is an interesting one because last season the Bruins had virtually no expectations going into the year. They had a lot of young players in the lineup. People were picking them to be a wild card team at best. A lot of people picked them not even to make the playoffs. And they ended up with 112 points, almost winning the division, and being one of the best teams in the league. And nobody saw that coming. But things just really, really clicked for them. The young players all played really, really well, and they had a great season. What if this year, now that there are expectations, everyone's picking them to be one of the best teams in the East? The pressure is on at this point. What if the young players don't play well? What if Jake DeBrusk takes a step back? What if Danton Heinen takes a step back? What if Ryan Donato doesn't come in and light up the score sheet like everyone thinks he's going to? What if Marchand and Pasternak don't have the elite level years that they had last year? There's potential here for this team to really take a significant step backwards. So while I certainly don't expect it to happen, and I hope it doesn't happen, I think that there is a chance that we could see a very disappointing Bruins team this year if things just don't click right the way that they did last season. But I don't expect that to happen. And lastly, my fifth and final bold prediction, the New York Islanders make the playoffs. And this one is probably the wildest out of all of these. But they've lost John Tavares, their captain is gone, their best player is gone. But they weren't a playoff team with him. What if with him gone, they kind of rally around that? They have Matt Barzal up front, basically who's now the number one center. He had 85 points as a rookie last year. If he does that again or even better, then you have a true number one center. I think Anthony Beauvillier is in for a huge monster breakout season. They still have Josh Bailey. They have Anders Lee, who's a 30-goal scorer. They have Jordan Eberle, who can score goals. They have some good players in place there. What if they rally around not having Tavares? They play good team hockey. They come together in the locker room as a team, and they have a tough bottom six. They stand up for each other. They have physical players. They play beat and bang hockey. They could snag a wild card spot. Obviously, goaltending is a huge, huge question and probably the biggest problem with this team. But Thomas Greiss played really, really well a few years ago when New York did go to the playoffs and played Florida in the first round and won in the first round before losing to Tampa Bay in the second round. So what if Greiss has a really good year again like he did that season? What if Robin Lehner has a good year backing him up now that he's not a starter and in a more comfortable backup role? Maybe the goaltending gets better. Maybe they play solid team defense. They don't have that elite number one guy, but they play solid team defense. And then like I said, they have weapons up front with Beauvillier and Barzal, Lee, Brock Nelson, Josh Bailey, Jordan Eberle, guys like that. They do have weapons up front. So I think it would be a huge shock to everybody. And it would be absolutely nuts if it did happen, but I think there is a slight chance that the Islanders somehow pull this out and sneak into a wild card spot and make the playoffs this year. So those are my 5 bold predictions for the 2018-19 season. I certainly don't expect any of those things to happen. Those are just wild, off-the-cuff things that I think potentially there's a slight chance could happen. And it's the NHL, so you never know. Wild things happen. There are surprises every year. So that's what I've got on that. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Talk to you guys soon.